Right.
Oh, one quick.
Hello, beautiful souls. This is Christy Godwin. Welcome to my podcast, Spiritual Talk with Christy Godwin and Friends. And I'm so excited to have the phenomenal Dr. Dawn St. John here. I have to tease him. I love that. Dr. Dawn. I love the ring to that. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And you put me in good cheer right from the beginning. So I've got a big smile on my face.
Oh, yay. So now Dr. Dawn has been a psychotherapist, a teacher, an author, and he has really immersed himself in this whole world for more than 50 years. And so if anyone's listening to this podcast on Apple or Spotify, go to my YouTube channel and look at him. He looks phenomenal. You wouldn't think he'd done anything for 50 years. Now, his book is Healing the Wounds of Childhood and Culture. So now, can you tell us just a little bit about your book?
Well, yeah, it's my life story. I mean, it's not an autobiography. I do put a little bit of my life in there, but I started when I was about 20 years old. I realized I needed help. I didn't understand why so much, but I found myself doing things that I knew could only, get me in more and more difficulty in life. So I started with conventional psychotherapy, and it was the beginning of a literally 55, 56-year journey of understanding how human beings get wounded, even in the best of families. And I can explain that later if you'd like. But we get wounded. And then I came to the realization that, of course, we do, because I believe we're on this earth to heal. And that, to me, means to manifest our wholeness. And that's what we're here to do. I mean, yes, we want to have careers and families and all the things that conventional society, considers successful and great. But that's only the beginning. We're here to go deep into our heart and soul and to know who we are at a deep level of being. We're here to recognize that, we're part animal, part spirit. We're all of it, and to not deny or negate or cut anything out, but to integrate more and more. We're here to recognize that our bodies are primarily water. And to think about that has implications. Yes, I'll be 81 years old in 1 month. And as you said, I don't look 81, and I teach fluid movement, to youngsters in their 40s and 50s.
I'm 55, so I so like being called a youngster.
Well, you are. You got another, 45 good years of growth in front of you. More or
Yes,
less.
yes. And now, what I'm so interested in is how you intertwine. In my business, I'm a psychic medium, but I also do a lot of mentoring and life coach. And so, how I got into that is I noticed that with my readings, I could only bring people so much healing, and there's so much hurt and trauma in this world. So now I really like how you have brought this healing back to substance use disorders, because I want everyone to listen real, because when I say substance use disorders, people usually think of drugs you buy on the street corner that are illegal, but that's not the case. There are so many legal substances that people use to the detriment of their body without even realizing it. And I've noticed in my mentorship, it's all about people trying to fill up emptiness, fill up holes within them. And they would process some of the trauma. So it sounds kind of counterintuitive to peel back layers and get rid of things out of your body. But that's really what I've discovered they need to do. Is that what your research has discovered?
Yeah, when people use or abuse substances, as you said, they're trying to fill holes. They're trying to feel something often or
Yeah.
not feel something often. Okay? And what they're longing to feel in their hearts is love.
Yeah.
Primarily love, to feel it, not
Yeah.
to know it conceptually. Oh
Yeah.
yes, my whoever loves me, only I never feel it. I know it, but I don't feel it.
Mm.
And that's a starvation. But Christy, here's the thing that I've come to. We talk about it in terms of trauma. And we talk about it as if most people are, quote, normal, and some people have had trauma. And that's kind of the way we think about it in our culture, in the professions, in the healing arts professions. And then the goal is to return to normal,
Yes.
remove the trauma, be normal. And what I've come to realize, and what I know in my bones, and what I know in my heart, is that those wounds are inescapable.
Yeah, they are.
I believe that human beings are evolving. I believe as a species, from the Stone Age, to the Greek and Roman empires, it's the Middle Ages. It's not necessarily linear, but there's an overall evolution to humankind.
Yeah.
And I believe that where we are now, okay, is better than where we've been,
I
and
agree.
still the fabric out of which we weave our lives, out of which we construct our families, out of which we raise our children, okay, has a long, long way to go.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
even the finest folks coming into the finest families are still profoundly influenced by the beliefs, by the ideas, by the conceptions of
Mhm.
this field of consciousness that I refer to as the fabric, because it gives you something, that you can see and
Mhm.
touch.
Mhm.
But you take that fabric and you start weaving,
Yes.
right, the
Yeah.
garment.
When I
So go ahead.
I
Go
was gonna
ahead.
say, this reminds me a lot of people's worldview, what you're talking about.
Yeah,
How, whenever we, or the lens in which you view the world, it is completely shaped by our families. And yes, most families want the best for their kids. They want to love them, they want to raise them. No matter how great your family is, you are still influenced by your school system, your family beliefs. It really influences the view that you have, your worldview, the lens that you look at the world through. It's like a little camera and the filters you have on there without even realizing it. And I always say,
absolutely.
and if we could get back to viewing this world through the lens of unconditional love that we were meant to view it in, what a change it would make.
What a change. But I don't believe it's getting back to, I believe it's going forward to, because, I don't believe it ever existed except maybe in small pockets, across civilization. As I said at the beginning, I do think we're improving. I
Yes.
think we're learning more and more, and that worldview is expanding and fits and starts. And uh, yeah, but for example, one of the things that human beings desire deeply is real heart-to-heart connection with other people, and especially the people they're closest to. In order to do that, in order to attain that level of deep connection, we have to be able to identify the costumes and masks that we wear to navigate our lives.
Yes.
Okay? And we all do, and we all have to. We have to. It's not like you can go out with your bare, without clothing and with your heart open like that.
It's true.
However, we also have to be able to take them off. We have to be able to, become emotionally naked, transparent,
Yes.
open, and be able to express that to another human being. You know?
Now, what I see people struggling with is being able to be emotionally vulnerable in a safe spot, because it's not safe to be emotionally vulnerable to everyone. Some people aren't a safe place. So how do you coach people through that to learning where is it a safe place to be vulnerable like that?
Well, I agree with you that it's generally not safe, and that's part of that cultural fabric or field of consciousness that we live in, right? Because
Mhm.
we're not trained, we're not taught really the importance of being safe, meaning non-judgmental, you know,
Yeah.
non-critical of each other. However, on an individual level, it's our responsibility to learn to discern where we can and where we can't, and to take charge of making a space safe. Now, again, and it's in our most intimate relationships, our marriages, our partners, our companions, that this needs to happen. And if, for example, my wife has a habit, if she had a habit of judging me every time I bring up a certain subject, I'd stop it. I'd say, wait a minute, that you're judging me. What's going on here?
Mhm.
Knowing that underneath there's some deeper truth that she's not expressing.
Yeah. So you're really, I love the word that you mentioned, discernment.
Hmm.
Discernment is big. I know, sometimes it's such a small word, discernment, but sometimes it can be difficult for people to learn. They want to, and I see it going both ways. I see people looking at everyone through rose-colored glasses, and I see, them then not trusting anyone. So how do you see people, if they really want to get control of their, maybe they're overeating, maybe they're playing too much video games. Do you see all of those things as a way that they are just trying to cover up something that's empty, trying to get an emotional high?
Often, I mean, we use, you know, I was having a conversation with my granddaughter this morning, and she'd lost a cat not too long ago that she was very, very, very bonded with. And she's 15 and a very deeply feeling young person. And the loss was extremely painful
Yeah.
for her. And, I pointed out that that's part of the burden or the agony of life, that we're the only species aware that we're going to die, that the people we love are going to die, and it's extremely poignant, vulnerable to know that, to realize that. On the other hand, it's also what makes life so precious as a human being. We're the only species that can look at a sunset and say, oh, glorious. You know, to appreciate the beauty that's in the world. And so to be able to hold that is extremely difficult. And we develop mechanisms to protect that tender heart.
I love the, I hear a lot of times people when, they come to me and I'm reading their past relatives that have transitioned to the other side, they think they're going to talk about like those big vacations and those big moments, but they don't. They talk about those moments watching TV or sitting on the front porch in the rocking chair or going fishing.
Mhm.
They talk about those small moments of joy because that's really what it's about. So many times we get focused on our goal. And I am as guilty of this as ever anyone. Oh, there's my goal. Get out of my way. Got to get to that goal. And you try to
Yeah.
get to your goal so quickly, you forget to enjoy the beautiful journey along the way.
Yep.
Now, can you explain the relationship between past traumas and the addictive behaviors you have seen coming out?
Well, yeah, again, trauma does a number of things. We could spend the whole hour or two talking about what trauma does to the individual's body, to their psychology, to their spirituality, their relationships, their politics. I mean, trauma does a lot of things. One of the things that it does is it disconnects us from ourselves. It disconnects us from our heart, from our sense of agency, from our sense of strength.
Yeah.
It results in shame deep inside often. And then addictions are, again, are attempts to feel good or to feel less bad,
Yeah.
one or the other. I mean, we're trying to find good feeling.
Now, have you noticed an uptick in people trying to find solace, trying to, heal some of that trauma because there has been an uptick in people trying to have, people having addictive behaviors after COVID. Did you see that COVID affected that any?
My practice is part-time, and I haven't seen that many people since COVID. COVID has done a lot of things. It's shaken our world, and I think we're just beginning to understand what the consequences have been. I've seen it with my grandchildren. It was very hard on them. The isolation, the staying out of school for a year or so, uh, it created havoc. Uh, it's always hard to know if the uptick, like in addictive behaviors, is an actual increase or if our measuring is improving. So, for example, it's hard to compare the
Mhm.
number of addicts in 2024 with the number of addicts in 1824 because, how was that measured back then? How is it measured now? I think the important point, Christy, is there are just too
Yes.
many people suffering. And there's so many different types of addictions, as you said,
Yeah.
the obvious ones, alcohol, heroin, fentanyl, all of
Mhm.
those. The less obvious ones, right? Prescription drugs that are functioning as, a narcotic to
Mhm.
ease the pain and how people become addictive there. But there's also addictions to our phones, to to devices. There's the addiction to being right all the time. Some people just have to be right, and some people have to know more than you do. If you say
Mhm.
something about the moon, they're suddenly an expert about the moon because
Yes.
they have to know more. It's an addiction. And so, to that's one of the reasons that I've concluded that we're on this earth to become whole, to manifest our wholeness.
Yes.
And and there's a whole lot of help out there now that wasn't there even 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And
I think it's very brave of you that, um, you know, clearly you're a male and you started this journey of becoming whole before it was even an in thing to do. Now we have so many resources out there, so many books. Yours, especially Healing the Wounds of Childhood and Culture. You can find it on your website. And for everyone listening, how you can get to Dr. Dawn's website will be in the verbiage of this podcast, whether you're listening to it on Apple, Spotify, or listening to it on my YouTube channel. But did you struggle when you first started your journey on finding resources to help you?
uh, no, it was more like I kept putting one foot in front of the other. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know the extent of the damage that occurred in my childhood. I had no idea how abnormal it was to be so frozen emotionally, so disconnected from myself, from my body, from my feelings, from my heart. I had no clue. And my assumption at the time was, okay, I need help, and that's the domain of a psychiatrist. So I went and saw a psychiatrist. And
As I still think that was very brave of you. So few people back when you started this journey would admit that they needed help and go seek it. That was very brave of you.
yeah, that was in 1965, 64, 65. And yeah, I guess it was. But I was in my last year of the Air Force, and I was drinking very heavily and getting into fights and crazy stuff like that. And I was 21 years old. Uh, and from there, I got interested in psychology. I went to graduate school. Then I started reading about the body and realized how important it would be to directly address the constrictions, the holdings, the chronic tension, the disconnections within my
Mhm.
body. So that led down a whole other path. And then I had another experience back in 1976 that just broke my heart open and was the first step in a spiritual journey. Okay?
Mhm.
So putting all that together, the psychological, the spiritual, the somatic, okay, and the relational. I had to learn how to be in a relationship with somebody. I was pretty ignorant.
I think a lot of people are. So,
Yeah,
I
I,
want to mention something that,
yes,
everyone listening to this, please, listen and pay attention to the words that Dr. Don has. He told me I could call him Don. He did at the beginning of the podcast. I just love to bring in Dr. Don, so I've kept it. Um, so now he,
I'm beginning to like it, Christy. I might start asking people to call me that. It's going to be all
I
your.
love it. It has such a ring to it, Dr. Don. I love it. So now he has talked about, here he is, this 21-year-old kid. I know 21-year-olds think they're adults, but really they're still children. And I say that because I have kids that are, older than that. So they're kids to me. But you were so brave to go and get help. So I want people listening to this to please know that they can do the same thing. You can be brave. As Dr. Don said, he didn't really know what he was doing. He just would put one foot in front of the other. I want everyone to know that they can put one foot in front of the other. They can get to unhappiness. They can resonate in that unconditional love. It is possible. It's possible to become reconnected to your body and process that trauma. I promise everyone listening, you can do it. You are brave. There are resources out there. I think you said that you're not really taking very many more appointments because you've gone part-time, but his book is a beautiful resource. And if you start researching, there are lots of other resources. I myself mentor people along these same lines. Now, whenever you are looking at people and they come to you, do you ever have someone who is sitting in trauma, but they don't realize it?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'd say over the years, many, many people, a person will come in and say, I don't understand why I'm having so much difficulty in my marriage, and my previous marriage didn't work. We got divorced, and now I'm having trouble in my second marriage. You know how many people? That's a lot of folks who could say that,
Yeah.
sincerely say that.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it because I had a pretty normal childhood. So, okay, tell me about it. Oh, well, my mother went into postpartum depression for 2 years after I was born, but she was a good mother, and yeah, my father did have a drinking problem, and but only on the weekends. And he was a pretty good guy, but yeah, he exploded. Yeah, he exploded when he drank, and they didn't like each other very much, and they seemed to fight. They go on and on
Mhm.
describing these conditions that would be agonizing for
Yeah.
any infant, for any 2-year-old, 3-year-old, because those kids feel deeply. And that distress becomes engraved in their soul,
It
not to
does.
mention their brain, their nervous system, their connective tissues, and on and on. In other words, they're deeply affected by it.
um, I have a friend and we've created a system of releasing traumas, and we just finished our book on it. It hasn't been published yet. But, in this book, we talk about how things can happen to you in vitro while
Hmm.
your mom is pregnant with you that can cause trauma that we don't realize. We can take on some of that anxiety. We can take
Oh,
on
really?
we can take on some of that trauma before we are even able to speak or consciously have memories. And they can really affect how we then process our world going forward. And people are really surprised to realize that when we start talking them through the system and they start having these flashbacks, they are very surprised at something that happened so long ago. And also, I think people can get, they're loyal to their family. And just because you're acknowledging that maybe you weren't raised in the best household doesn't mean you don't love them. You can still love your people and process the trauma.
Boy, you said a mouthful. I want to say a few words about a couple of things you said. Even before we can speak, we begin to formulate our worldview. We begin to formulate our core beliefs. Is the world a safe place? Can I trust human beings?
Yeah.
Will I get suffocated or hurt if I get really close? You know, and many others along those lines. Will my needs be met? You know,
Yes.
and those beliefs then serve as filters, letting in to our consciousness, to our awareness, situations, events, experiences that align with those beliefs,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and keeping out what doesn't align. So if a person, and so many people, believe they're not worthy of love or they're not lovable, then, they're not going to easily let love in.
Yeah.
And that is that's a root of so many problems, addictions later on.
Yes.
The other thing you said, Christy, that I want to comment on is that sense of disloyalty that people feel if they acknowledge that they were, say, wounded by their mother's depression. Right? They feel a sense of disloyalty. Wait a minute, she tried her best. And here's an important point there, and that's she did. She may have been a great person, doing her very best, and loved you and all of that. But her conditions at the time, okay, what was going on with her, her comprehension, her own wounding, whatever it was, affected you in a certain way. And it's not about blaming her, it's about healing you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You can say, I was really hurt by the way she stopped hugging me when I was 3 years old.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes people don't realize that. And I love how you put how, let me see if I can get this right, because I liked your wording of how, so that filter is created. That filter of, okay, for whatever reason, your mom was going through this huge depression. So she had a hard time expressing love. So then you didn't learn how to receive love. And then, so that's the filter that you have created, is
Yeah,
that you're not accepting love. And so then that's what you attract. You attract people who don't give you proper love.
yeah, it's like that. And see, what happens is that we conclude, we believe that we're not lovable.
Yeah.
If that love from mother wasn't felt, didn't get in for whatever reason, if mother's depressed, if mother is highly anxious, if mother is stressed out, all those factors affect her capacity to let love through
Yes.
from her heart to someone else. And so not only, are we deeply affected in that period of time, but we draw the conclusion without words. This is all at a body level. We draw the conclusion that we are not lovable or we are not worthy of love.
Yeah.
Okay, so then yes, we do pick people who won't threaten us by loving us too much.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, and if they do, we'll fight against it.
Something else that I have noticed is that people are that we tend to teach our children that self-love, like loving ourselves, taking care of ourselves, we have taught them to equate that to selfishness. Have you noticed that people feel like if they put up boundaries, if they say what they want and what they need, and we talk about self-love and standing in your power, and then like, oh, but then that's selfish. Have you noticed people
Oh,
equating that?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's not at all uncommon for people to assume incorrectly that taking care of oneself means selfish. It
Yes.
doesn't. It doesn't, because to be able to really be there for you, I need to be there for myself as well.
Yes. We know a lot of the people, oh, make sure you fill your own glass first, but we preach it, but we really don't show people how to do it. And I tell people all the time, you can only give what you have. If you have not filled yourself with love, you don't have love to give.
Mm-hmm.
And also something find that people struggle with is putting up healthy boundaries. I'm a firm believer that unconditional love is allowing people to be who they want to be, because you can't fix everyone. You can't make someone be a more loving person if they don't want to be that. They have to be able to do it on their own. So sometimes who someone is choosing to be isn't going to fit with what works in our world. So we need to put up boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people struggle with that. Like, how do they put up boundaries in a loving way? Can you speak on that a little bit?
Well, let me ask you a question. Where in their education are they taught to put up boundaries in a loving, kind, but firm way?
It's not taught.
No, it's not. It's not at all.
So how do you walk people through that process? How do you talk to them about putting up boundaries in a loving, firm way?
Well, sometimes you have to model it. I had a young man yesterday talking about a situation with his wife who didn't want to go visit his family, his mother and siblings, and he really wanted her to, but he didn't want to push up against her boundaries. And so now we're talking about about being clear, being kind, being acknowledging of her feelings, but also being firm. This is my mother. It
Right.
won't hurt to spend an hour. If they're disrespectful, we'll leave immediately. But it's important to me.
Right.
And to bring strength. I mean, it's about, when our strength isn't supported, it leaves an ache, a hole, an emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
When the emphasis is on being obedient and submissive, okay, and manifestations of strength are highly discouraged or punished.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Right. That leaves a hole there. And it's important that we learn to fill that hole, that we feel it first
Yes.
and begin to fill it, because it's important to have good relationships.
Yeah.
It's important to bring strength, firmness, along with kindness. And another confusion that happens, Christy, is people think it's cruel or it's mean. If I
Mm-hmm.
say no to you, I'm being mean.
Yes. I teach people a lot. No is a complete sentence.
Good one.
Now, I do want to speak on that I love the way you said that not only you have to fill it and fill yourself, fill yourself with love, what you need, you also have to feel it. You always have to feel and process the emotions. If you don't feel those emotions, if you don't process them, they're going to leave their mark on your physical body. You think a lot of how much our diseases are now being linked back to some kind of emotional trauma. And I'm not saying all diseases, I'm not saying that at all. I will take responsibility for this. I was telling Dr. Don earlier, for most people that are following me already know, but I was diagnosed in the end of 2022 with stage 3 cancer. It quickly went to stage 4. Now, when you're told at the rate this cancer is spreading, you have about 18 months. You start digging deep. You start, what do I need to process here? I did a ton of research. And of course, I did some Western medicine things, holistic, all of the things, but also I did a lot of processing of trauma. Let me tell you, that's my business. I thought I had already processed trauma, but just when you think you're done, man, you just start peeling back more and more layers, and there's just more and more. And now
There's
have
no
you,
end. There's
there,
no end.
there is no end.
And that's good news because our potential for growth is unlimited.
Yeah. Yeah. I have tell people that all the time that when you're finished growing, you're transitioning to the other side. You're done on this earth plane because there's always something that you can process. There's always, an emotion that you can sit with. I don't know what your belief system is on what I'm about to say. So Dr. Don doesn't know this. We might have a disagreement right here, but I truly believe that
We
people
could survive it.
yes, we can. That people at their core, who they are before society starts putting, their expectations on them, your parents, you are unconditional love. You can do that. You have the ability to vibrate in beautiful unconditional love.
And you want to know if I agree with that?
Do you agree with it? Are we about to have our first disagreement?
Yeah, pretty much. Let me give you a perspective that I kind of like, that I talk about from time to time. We are primarily, human body, we're primarily water. By weight, water is approximately 70% of our body, give or take. By number of molecules, my understanding is that it's about 99%. That is, that there's so many more water molecules than anything else. Water is amazing. It's amazing. It is such a nourishing, nurturing substance, right? It falls out of the sky and it feeds the earth. It goes back to the sky, it gets carried to some other place, does the same thing over again. It falls to the earth and feeds it. Water is so receptive. Okay? It absorbs, it absorbs whatever touches it.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Water, water is powerful. You've been around the rapids or a waterfall, and it 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 its power, it generates electricity for an entire city. It's powerful. Water is adaptable. Water is so changeable. It comes up against a big boulder, it'll find a way to get around it. Yeah, and on and on. And the other thing that we can't live without is light.
Yeah.
And the sunlight shines on everyone. Everyone. It doesn't choose. It doesn't say you deserve and you don't. It
Yeah.
shines. And I think that reflects who we are at the deepest level. I think that is love.
Yeah. It
But
is.
if you say just love, sometimes people, their association is Hallmark.
Oh
I
yeah. 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 Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love you. I'm sending you roses, and but love, is a force that, in my opinion, has all the qualities that I just mentioned.
Yes. I had someone that I was having a discussion with the other day on unconditional love. They were in my office here for something other than an appointment. And I have some Bibles on my shelf. And of course, that brought up the discussion of me being a psychic medium and having these Bibles. So we were talking about unconditional love. And she was saying how she believes in loving people unconditionally. And she said, because I have to get a relationship with them. So basically, she can tell them what she believes. I said, but to me, that's not really unconditional love because you're saying you're loving someone so then you can tell them your belief system. Unconditional love is really loving people where they are, how they are. And most people, I would say the majority of people, don't even understand how to do that. They don't even understand or comprehend that concept.
So I think, Christy, that it's not so much a matter of doing. I think it's a matter of being. I
Yes.
think it's a state of consciousness that we can
Absolutely.
move towards attaining and wanting. Often, people will say to me they want their husband or wife or girlfriend or boyfriend to love them unconditionally and they don't want anything less than, when someone says that to me, do you know what I tell them? Get a puppy, get a
Yes, I'm
dog.
glad you mentioned puppies. I don't know if you can hear mine in the background. I put them in a kennel right before we came in here, and apparently they're not very happy about it. We've only had
Can't
them
hear
about a
them,
week. Oh, good, good, good. We've
but
had them
you
about a
know,
week, and they're not very happy about me putting them in that
a,
kennel.
a puppy will love you unconditionally, no matter
Yes,
what you do, no matter if you leave them alone for the whole day, if you skip a meal, or they'll just love you.
yes, yes.
Now, human beings won't do that. They simply won't.
Us silly humans.
But to reach a place where we actually feel love in our hearts
Mhm.
and we can shine it on whomever's in front of us,
Yeah.
and then we're challenged because I don't know about you, but I can't do that yet.
Can we ever?
Alternative.
Do we ever get to the point where we can? Earthside, Earthside.
That's
Do we ever?
Well, you're a psychic medium. So if I said it takes lifetimes, probably for most of us, it can take lifetimes,
Yes,
right? But
yes,
that's the direction of spiritual growth.
absolutely.
Okay? So when you see that politician on the television set, the one who represents the other side, them, that one, that group,
Yes, yes,
the
that one.
leader of that group,
That group, that person.
one one of those two old men, that one that arouses this desire to strangle.
I don't know anything about that, Dr. Don.
Yep, I'm sure most of your listeners don't either. But see, that's where the challenge is. Can we maintain that sense of love in our hearts and still engage in our politics, in our communities, in our families? Okay.
It's easy to show love to those who are acting in a loving, what we perceive to be a loving manner.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
we have our filter on, and our filter has determined what a loving manner is. So it's easy to sit in that vibration. The challenge is to sit in that vibration of love whenever we feel like we're being challenged or our belief system is being challenged. That is definitely a testament to are we going to walk the walk?
mm,
Unconditional love.
absolutely, absolutely.
So now, if I do have to tell you, when you were talking earlier, I forgot to mention it. My heart was just broken. It was probably about a year ago. I was talking to a gentleman. He'd come to me for a reading. His wife popped in there, and because the person that had stepped up for them, that had transitioned to the other side, was talking to the gentleman, and there were reference on divorce coming up. I saw the husband and wife there, and so I was very uncomfortable talking about this divorce, but they did confirm they were about to get a divorce. And the spirit that stepped up was talking about it was because of his anger. And so the gentleman that was reading was kind of offended. He said, I don't have a problem with anger. And so his wife, who was there, who they were getting divorced, said something that said, yes, you do. He said, I don't have a problem. Everyone else has a problem with my anger. It's not me.
An
And I
honest.
thought, what do you say in that moment? So I would like to encourage everyone out there, if you think you don't have a problem, I'm not saying to take everyone's opinion of your behavior, but if someone has mentioned to you over and over, or different people have mentioned a certain behavior that's an issue, you might want to talk to someone about that.
Here's a point I want to emphasize. Even if you're going along in your life and things are smooth, you're content with your work you're content with your family, you're content with your health. Okay, and I probably reduce that population to a small number, but if you are someone who is content in, all the major areas of your life, I urge you still to embark on the journey. The journey is for everyone because we are so much more than we take ourselves to be. Our capacity for love and intimacy and closeness, our capacity to feel free and independent and still be in a close and intimate relationship, our capacity to maintain our bodies in a fluid, flexible, vibrant way into our 80s. I can't speak beyond that. It's all our capacity for knowing that we are not these separate, isolated individuals, that we are part of a whole. And to even begin to sense that is mind-boggling. So I urge you, and of course, if you do have problems, you've got motivation right there to go on the journey.
On that note, I don't think I could have put that better, Dr. Don. That was beautiful. Yes.
Thank
And
you.
even those who think they have it great and everything is going perfect with them, just know, embark on this journey. Please check out his book. It is Healing the Wounds of Childhood and Culture. It's Dr. Don St. John. There, he's putting up a beautiful picture of it. If you're, again, if you're listening to this on a podcast outlet, check out my YouTube channel. You can see it on there. His website is pathsofconnection.com. Again, how to contact him on many social media outlets will be in the verbiage of this on the podcast or on the YouTube, according to where you're looking at it. Thank you so much for being here today. It was a joy
My
to talk to
pleasure.
you.
Yeah, thank you, Christy. My pleasure.
I want to thank everyone for joining me, and everyone have a blessed day.